Nigeria's Finance Minister Kemi Adeosun says the country can no longer borrow to finance the budget.
Let's hear her.
We need to mobilize additional revenue to fund our budget increase. We've got to get our budget bigger. And to do that, we can't borrow anymore. We simply have to generate more revenue. We have to plug the leakages. We have to improve tax collection, and so that we can manage our borrowing. We need to mobilize additional revenue to fund our budget increase. We've got to get our budget bigger. And to do that, we can't borrow anymore. We simply have to generate more revenue. We have to plug the leakages. We have to improve tax collection, and so that we can manage our borrowing.
All right, we have with us in the studio to discuss this policy analyst, Gbenga Onitilo. It's good to have you in the studio.
Good morning.
Morning.
Good to be here again.
Yeah.
Right.
Now, when we hear this from the minister, it almost looks like a U-turn here, because months ago they were saying we're still within the bracket where we can borrow money, we need to spend ourselves out of recession, but now the minister is changing the tone.
Well, when you go for international lenders like World Bank, African Development Bank, they provide you with some fiscal framework that you must apply on your economy before such funds can be released to you. The minister making a U-turn is because we have not been able to meet most of those requirements. Like, for example, multiple windows of exchange. Float your currency. Don't do a command and control economy. Let the market forces determine the value of your currency, which is not what we are doing at the moment. Let the macroeconomic indices drive your economy so that it trickles down to the microeconomic issues. So that's not what we've been doing. And because of that, we've not been able to meet the requirements of these international lenders. And if you can't meet the requirements, nobody's going to put their money on the table for you. They have to see your fiscal discipline, the corporate governance issues coming up, and also the judicial utilization of the funds. We have always borrowed to pay salaries. We have not borrowed to stimulate production or growth, real growth in the economy.
And of course, the IMF had warned not too long ago that Nigeria's rising debt stock is not good for macroeconomic stability, especially for the African region. So what happens then to the budget deficit that we have? Yeah,
we have a budget deficit of close to about 2 trillion plus. And also, if you look at it, our budget has close to about 2 trillion you are going to use to service debt. And we're not talking about the principal here. We're talking about the interest. So people need to be clear. And, you know, they say something in Africa that Nigeria has the lowest debt to GDP ratio, which gives us this effrontery to always go ahead and borrow. I think right now, by 2018, they say we'll be moving to about 25% based on IMF and World Bank analysis. But in the next 3 years, if we continue that trend, we're going to be close to about 100%. And why do we say that? The debt to GDP ratio thing does no longer hold water in economics. When economics talk, it's always about debt to revenue generation ratio. Do you have enough revenue that you are generating to be able to pay back your loan? That's the issue. It has nothing to do with the GDP. The GDP is just the size of your economy. It doesn't show that you are having a thriving economy in a sense. Because we have an economy that everything is still built, our major earning, 90% of our major is still built around oil. And oil, if you read the news a few days ago, they were saying Nigeria, the quota of Nigeria is going to be cut.
Absolutely.
Libya and Nigeria. Yeah. And what hope does that hold for us? And the measures the CBN is using, injecting dollars into the market to bridge the gap between the parallel and the future market.
So what's your take then on the seeming confidence on the part of Kemi Adeosun, who says, look, we can begin to look inwards and look for other sources of revenue locally? Of course, you talked about tax, and you and I know that the tax bracket, how many Nigerians really do pay taxes? Now, beyond that, what are the other really, I mean, if you were to look at it, what are the sources of revenue that Nigeria can actually rely on locally?
Basically, before we get into that, another thing you need to look at If government cannot borrow internationally, what do? They go to domestic borrowing.
Yeah.
Their domestic borrowing, part of the core of borrowing for government has always been domestic, which forms about 60 to 65% of borrowing. And that has a negative effect on the economy. Why do I say that? Because government is the biggest spender on the economy. So when you make the core of your borrowing from the financial sector close to 60, 65%, what that does, it increases the cost of borrowing for the private sector. So the banks automatically will be more comfortable borrowing to government. That's why you have government bonds floated all around. You have foreign portfolio investors coming into the country. They invest in bonds for 120 days and they're out of the economy. That is not healthy for an economy that is trying to diversify from oil into non-oil revenue. Every economy is driven by the SME, MSME, is driven by the private sector. But we have an economy that is built around government, that government is the business driver. It ought not to be, and that is why we are having problem. You talk about taxation, for example. Why do we have issue with taxation? Number one, income inequality. That's one of the major challenge. When you have an economy where over 80% of your people live on less than $2 a day, the margin between the rich and the poor is massive. So what we should be looking at is how to stimulate spending. It's not just people say spend, we need to spend. No, you need to stimulate spending. How do you stimulate spending? You have to enact your policies that ensure the ease of doing business. Nigeria has one of the worst in the world. You need to stimulate policies that will enhance the ease. So I think some weeks back, the vice president signed an executive order about procurement within the civil service that says 60% of what they use or source for will be locally. But I'll be more excited when I see how that will effectively be implemented. What that means is that instead of purchasing foreign vehicles, they used to partner with people like Innocent and all that, car manufacturers. They call the vehicles that are used for operations and all that should come from that industry. When you do that, you are enhancing local production. So our focus, our drive should be, if 90% of your GDP is basically not oil, oil is less than 10% of our GDP. The 90% is what you should be looking at policies to enhance those sectors to grow, rather than subsidizing consumption. What we keep doing with injection of funds, the forex into the market, we're growing other economies. We're not growing Nigeria. We're putting funds into the market for who? People going on pilgrimage, people importing, people buying PTA to travel, people paying for medical expenses, people paying for education. We are developing other economies. We're not developing our economy. We are doing that against the critical sectors of the economy that should have access to such things for raw materials for production. Because when people cannot spend in an economy, it means government revenue also will further decline. But when you stimulate spending, when you stimulate activity of sectors, for example, we have to look at the things that you produce locally as against the things that you import. So increase the levies on the things you import and do some tax exceptions and tax holiday for the things that you are also producing locally, so that you can enhance and increase their capacity against what is being imported. But what we are doing right now with subsidizing the use of forex for those that are importing, you are killing your local economy. You are making imports far cheaper than what is produced locally.
And we're very excited too that we're exporting yams. Is that what we really should be excited about? Or actually exporting yam products?
Look, there are the diverse angle you want to look at it. For me, I'm the kind of person that looks at the value chain. Don't just look at the product. The value chain that you can create around the product should be what you should be looking at. When you can create a value chain around something like yam, you are going to create different kind of economy, different kind of businesses, which will further enhance government revenue generation. That should be our focus. It's not just the product from the farm. It's building a value chain around the farm, what are the things that you can create from yam. Those should be the things we should be focusing on, because with that, you are going to create different businesses, different economy. You're going to employ more people, then people can spend, then government can make more money. That is the way thinking government should look at things.
All right, let me take you back to the oil quota cut that is expected for Nigeria.
Yeah.
It was projected that the Minister of Finance said that by the fourth quarter, all things being equal, that Nigeria should be out of recession. Now, if there's going to be oil quota cut for Nigeria, as the case may be, how realistic is that when everything is still surrounded or surrounding oil?
90% of your foreign earnings still comes from oil. And you are making a plan on an assumption on a commodity you don't have control over. OPEC determines that. And when you now look at the battle going on between Saudi Arabia, Qatar, and Iran, you find yourself in the mix at the end of the day. So a commodity that you don't control is supposed to be a cash flow for you to use those funds to diversify your government earnings, which what we are saying in essence. You know, people will be shouting so much about we want to diversify the economy. Look, the economy is diversified. When you look at our GDP, it's diversified. What is not diversified is government revenue earnings. How government earns its revenue is what is not diversified. And that is what government needs to start focusing on. When you are looking at the service sector, for example, that gives you close to 65% of your GDP, and most of them cannot have access to forex, like the people that are into manufacturing or agri or oil and gas, for raw materials for them to enhance the things they need to do. Those are some of the things we need to look at. So if we keep focusing on oil, oil is diminishing. It's a dying. That's why you have Aramco of Saudi Arabia divesting out of oil. They have funds over $2 trillion that they have saved over the years that are now used to diversify into what?
And of course, we hear that in the next decade or so, European countries, most of them would actually
phase out use of diesel, petrol engine cars.
And all of that.
So,
and you just wonder what kind of preparation are we putting in place?
We're not prepared at all.
Are we even prepared at all?
We don't have any framework so far shows that we are prepared for life after the whole world has moved away from oil.
No, Nigeria has this feeling, when we get to that bridge, we will cross it.
No, you must have a plan. You must have an action plan. Because countries like that have 50 years plan, and they have concrete, concise action steps that they take daily to ensure they get there. But as long as you keep planning your earnings and revenue around oil, a dying commodity, don't forget you still have the shale producers in America. They are one of your major threats. Once oil really crosses the threshold of about $50 or $52 in the market, then they come in and start pumping, and the price of oil. So what happened? As of today, I think oil is between $45 to $46. Our benchmark from our budget was about 42.5. So it poses a major threat to us.
So what's your take then when you hear from Kemi Adeosun that the budget is too small to deliver the essential services that is expected?
Well, I quite agree. If you're going to, for example, we're looking at a budget of about 7 trillion.
7 trillion.
When Nigeria should be looking at a budget of about 30, 50 trillion. If you want to borrow massively. But the thing is this, the bulk of our budget is still around recurrent expenditure. With that, you're not going to make any milestone achievements. If we are borrowing to pay salaries, we're not borrowing for production to stimulate growth in the economy. We are not ready.
But we had been told that the 2017 budget was going to be more of capital than recurrent, and even when we borrow, that is going to be for infrastructure development.
I'm sure you are aware that they struggle to pay salaries.
Well,
in fact, some are still having issues paying salaries.
They're struggling to pay salaries. So that poses more of a great challenge. So that's why you have to look at the cost of governance. Is still a major issue we have to look at. How open is even government itself? For example, our procurement process, bids, tenders, how open is it? In countries like Bolivia, Chile, and all those other countries, most of these things are fully automated online. Every bids, procurement is done online. The companies are online. You see how things go on online. Are we that transparent?
But has it helped that the government has saved a lot of money through TSA, for example, according to the government, and of course, plugged the loopholes where the ghost workers, about 50,000 ghost workers taken out of the system and all of that. How much dent would that...
Exactly.
We're plugging... Look, it's just all those plugging of holes. It's just basic economic things that you need to do. But the key things that you need to do Plugging of holes is not what is. It's part of what governance is all about: accountability, openness, and all that.
It's just operations.
It's just operational issue. But the key things we keep mentioning are this: the policies that will ensure the critical sectors of the economy become more productive, creating a value chain. For example, you mentioned yam earlier. We are so excited about export rather than create a value chain. When you create a value chain around a commodity like yam, you create other businesses. When you create other businesses, you have more people gainfully employed.
All right.
And people can spend their way.
So that means plugging of holes doesn't translate to revenue generation.
It doesn't just translate. It means you are just copying waste.
Exactly. Let's bring in Foladele here to give us a perspective on social media, what people are saying. Fola, good morning.
Foladele.
Good morning, Ngozi. Good
How are you?
Nice to see you.
Good morning, Benga.
Good morning.
Yeah.
All right, so this is not a very exciting one, of course, but of course. But let's see what people are saying online. Uwemi Yang says Nigeria's debt profile is 19 trillion naira. Kemi Adeosun said that. What have these guys in this regime been borrowing these monies for? Anybody knows? Wale Oladipupo says, we can no longer borrow. Nigeria owes about 19 trillion, of which 75% of debt was incurred during the last administration, and they ruined us. Tyro says, things must be really bad for her to admit this. Wankosi says, can't borrow, won't borrow, or nobody is willing to lend us at lend to us rather, at a reasonable rate. I don't seem to get clarity from scanning the article. Puki says, and as usual, it is the public's fault because we don't pay tax. Where are the extensive reforms, government that is still living large? Abiola M says, first step is to publicly acknowledge the problem. Okay, so I guess we've done that. Benga, let me take you back to the root of the problem, because I mean that seems to be a bit of focus on that online. You know, we love to blame, we're Nigerians, and you can't blame us. So you have people saying we got to this point because the last administration left things pretty badly. We have people saying, well, this current administration, did they underestimate the problem before coming in? And we have people saying, oh, are we going to blame the fact that the public does not pay tax? What exactly is the problem? How did we get to this point? Governance
is a continuum. I don't like shifting one side or the governance is a continuum, and also you need to understand that economy is a growing concern. When people say you are broke, Nigeria is still a growing concern. We are still making money, generating revenue by the day. So the thing is this: your own action plans. Those are the things that will determine how we move from where we are. You were talking about debt portfolio. In just about 2 years, this administration have I think have secured a loan of over 2 trillion. And you ask yourself, can you see the impact of that on the economy, on infrastructure, on growth, or development of the economy? What did they do with over 2 trillion? Let's forget the last administration. Let's focus on the people, because we can't keep driving, looking at the back rear view mirror. We need to move ahead. Governance is a continuum. Somebody takes over, you need to have your own action plan in place, and now you are going to address key issues within the economy. Data should drive what you do. You are talking about taxation. When you're talking about taxation and you are looking at over 5 million people have lost jobs in 2 years, over $100 billion FDI left your economy, you fail the JP Morgan indices, and once you fail the JP Morgan indices, it will be hard for you to secure low interest loan all over the world. When they were all shouting then that we need to devalue our currency, we had that opportunity, that window to do that, to float the currency. But we never did that. We did that too late. And before we did that, the foreign direct investment that guarantees sustainable growth in an economy has left the economy. So the confidence for investors to come into your economy, they are going to be looking at two key people. They are going to be looking at your Minister of Finance, and they're going to be looking at the central bank governor. The policies they make, the comments, the pronouncements, the things they put on the table. Everybody is shouting budget. Budget is not what's going to get you out of it. Budget rides on your framework, your agenda, economic blueprint and policies. That's why a budget will ride on. A budget itself is just a proposal of spend. That's not what's going to get you from where you're supposed to get out for. You need to have a framework, an economic framework that is going to stimulate spending. And
so
get
the
us out
Economic
of this
Recovery and Growth Plan, ERGP, which recently the U.S. Economic Counselor says is a fantastic document.
Fantastic document.
How much confidence should we have in
We're
that
always
document?
good at preparing fantastic documents.
Yes. Okay, so the real problem then lies where?
The will to make the right decisions, because we are always political when it comes to economics. In economics, you don't get political. You hit the ground running and make the, for example, the IMF chairman said, president said, why will you have multiple windows of exchange? We have the pilgrimage rates, we have the people that are buying PTA rates, the education rate. We have, what kind of economy will a foreign direct investor come in when you have multiple windows of exchange? You need to collapse that into one. Okay. We all travel around the world and we'll see that there's only one window of exchange they have anywhere.
All right, Gbenga Onitilo, thank you for coming on the program. Thank you so much. Fola, I must thank you here too. Thank you very much.